hit squad compared to a well-oiled murder machine. A lawyer and journalist shot on the streets of Amsterdam. A blasé approach to killing the wrong person. There's even slang for every accidental victim. A Vergismoord. Welcome to the Morengo Trial, where 17 men stand accused of involvement in 6 murders, 4 attempted murders, and preparing for 6 others between 2015 and 2017. Fear hangs in the air around this court case, telling a tale of a country where the Hydra of organised crime has so many heads that it's threatening the very rule of law. When the trial resumed this month, journalists were asked to sign agreements not to name judges or prosecutors for fear of them being targeted. After reports that co-chief suspect Ridouan Taghi was planning a jailbreak, the streets around the fortified courtroom, known as the bunker, are ringed with police cars and trained teams made up of police and soldiers. The Marengo is only the latest in a series of organised crime trials to shake the Netherlands. This year, Dutch courts are also trying alleged criminal drug lord Roger P., accused of turning shipping containers into an underworld prison with its own gruesome torture chamber. Meanwhile, a Marengo side trial involves motorbike club Wago members charged with shooting dead 5 people, preparing 3 other murders, and putting another 7 people on the waiting list to be killed. I call Netherlands a narco state 2.0, says Jan Struijs, chairman of the Netherlands Politie Bond police union. We aren't Mexico with 14,000 dead bodies, but in our parallel economy, there is an attack on public order and unprecedented numbers of people with personal security, politicians, judges, prosecutors, police staff, journalists, because there is still a serious risk from organised crime. It is a huge problem being tackled on every front, but we have a long way to go. Struijs first raised concerns that this small, well-connected, trading nation has characteristics of a narco state 4 years ago. At the time, there was a muted political response, but then the brother of the Marengo Crown witness Nabil B was shot dead, and the Crown witness's original lawyer, Dirk Wiesem, was gunned down outside his house. Finally, last July, celebrated crime reporter Peter R. de Vries, who had unconventionally agreed to act as Nabil B's representative, was shot in the head on a busy central Amsterdam street and died of his wounds. Today, few would argue that increasingly violent crime has clawed its fingers deep into civil society. Lieselot Bisschop, criminologist at Erasmus School of Law in Rotterdam, points out, before you can combat the crime, it is important to understand who is involved and how. She and a team of researchers have been looking at the key drug runners' entry and exit point of Rotterdam port, where last year a hit-and-run cargo team confiscated a record 73 tonnes of cocaine, plus another record of 1,500 kilos of heroin. Whether it's a good thing that they are catching more, I don't know. Is more going through anyway? Said Professor Bishop. The quantity aspect is always very challenging. It's a dark number, guesstimates. Meanwhile, the Netherlands is apparently a centre of synthetic drug manufacture, with regular busts of professional crystal meth and MDMA labs, especially in Noord-Brabant. When international police decrypted millions of messages on devices criminals thought were secure, such as Sky and EncroChat, and the Dutch decoded pretty good privacy software for Blackberries in the Marengo case, they lit up a web of crime. Experts agree the Netherlands' infrastructure is key for both legal and illegal trade. In their 2020 book, Netherlands Drugland, Dutch Police Academy professor Peter Tops and journalist Jan Tromp explored how criminals exploit its efficient ports, good roads, and strong financial and digital infrastructure. The Netherlands has long been a trading country, not just the harbours, but also our high-quality internet environment. We have a huge number of bankers, and our country is central in Europe in terms of all kinds of transport and transit, said Struijs. We have huge numbers of imports, which means a lot of drugs are mixed with legal trade, coming in containers of fruit or liquor. Organised crime takes advantage of the legal infrastructure. Corruption is another factor. As a nation, the Dutch are keen to make a deal, and regular businesses haven't always been too fussy about carrying out background checks, as various banking money laundering cases and high tax haven rankings show. The MVB Dutch Banking Association says an estimated 16 billion euros is illegally earned cash washes around each year. Personal corruption is also a problem. In a port 40 kilometres long and with 180,000 employees, says Bishop. Within Europe, it is definitely the gateway for any kind of trade. Over the years, the port has become more physically and digitally secure. We think this has contributed to more pressure on people in the port. Basically, you need corruption to pull it off, both public and private, not just police and customs, but also planners in container terminals. You need someone on the inside. So in court, says veteran crime reporter Saskia Bellman, There's been a spate of cases against allegedly corrupt customs staff, shipping and port employees, partly as a consequence of the Dutch culture of looking the other way. There are also concerns about the so-called collectors, often young men who trespass into the harbour and collect drugs. Nobody knows if the Netherlands is worse than other European port countries in terms of international organised crime, but its soft drug culture is undoubtedly a weak spot. Although smoking cannabis in coffee shops selling the drug are tolerated, it is illegal to grow commercially. This means that cafes offer a legally tolerated channel for criminal activity and a training ground for young criminals. In the Netherlands, it's becoming increasingly common to read about the ethnic aspect of organised crime, the so-called Mokro Mafia, Moroccan origin mafia, which inspired a true crime book and spin-off television series. But Peter Schouten, one of the lawyers for the Crown witness in the Morengo Trial, says, it's not true that it's only people from another heritage. Certain gangs have a kind of microorganism and a gangland where there's a lot of same culture, but there are other gangs arrested, and you read stories saying that the new kingpin is Bolle Jos from Brabant. It's hard to measure organised crime, partly because victims don't always make reports, but ethnic minorities are overrepresented as crime suspects. Statistics Netherlands researcher Martin Bloem says, if you correct for age, education level, socio-economic category, there's not much difference between different ethnic origins, he concludes. It's not so much about someone's colour, but the situation in which they find themselves. It is unclear whether the segregated Dutch grammar school system helps contribute to excluding certain groups too. Critics say it selects too young, hammers in socio-economic difference, and makes no account for innately talented children who speak Dutch as an additional language. Crime, after all, can be seen as a way out of poverty and an equal opportunities recruiter, so there's a widespread recognition that long-term crime prevention needs to offer other options, especially to young people in problem districts. There's a new drive targeting vulnerable areas in Utrecht and projects such as working with the top 600 criminals and their families in Amsterdam. Meanwhile, international efforts have been led by the mayors of Rotterdam and Belgium Antwerp, where a record 90 tons of smuggled cocaine was found last year. They have visited South American counterparts and lobbied governments to ramp up international efforts against organised crime, increase barriers in harbours and confiscate criminal assets. In Rotterdam, there are promising signs of public-private cooperation, with bus by multi-agency HARP, a new information sharing centre, a business integrity initiative and training container to coach harbour staff in combating corruption. A long-awaited law banning civilians from the container area is in place to help apprehend those vital collectors picking up drugs from containers. The new Dutch coalition hopes to add to these initiatives. It will start investing specifically in combating crime that undermines public order from 2023, ratcheting up to €100 million yearly investment by 2025. In the meantime, the last budget put aside an extra €434 million to increase annual budgets for police, judicial organisation and subversive crime prevention, though experts warn that money must not be used to add to the layers of bureaucracy. Instead, some want a shift in public attitudes of drug taking. As a prosecutor said in the tortured container trial, show users the abhorrent consequence of their habit, rather than perpetuating the permissive hippie culture of the 70s. It's not done in the Netherlands to point in the direction of the drug users, says Beltman. If you don't use drugs, there's no market. But people who use cocaine at the weekends don't make the connection between organised crime and their drug use. And if you tell them, they are really offended. Perhaps the biggest problem, however, lies in how to prosecute those alleged criminals who are caught. In the mega Marengo trial, hearings are currently mired in details such as whether the co-chief suspect, Sadil Razaki, left his reading glasses behind when he was extradited from Colombia in December, and whether due process was followed in his subpoena. The accused in the trial deny the charges, and Schouten doesn't expect a verdict until 2023. The trial is under an enormous amount of pressure, he says. This is about the rule of law, the dike against injustice, and we must continue to protect this, but there's a lot of fear. Even when the trial verdict is reached, until the words turn to action, that fear is unlikely to go away. I hope you've enjoyed this story, guys, and please like, share and subscribe, and let me know any suggestions for future videos in the comment section. Cheers, guys.